the beginning of despair, and it happened, on profoundly serene days, that a small village rested among hills as gentle as a lamb's back, where the wind carried ancient songs and the fields murmured praises to their Creator. There lived simple men, pious women, and children who played without a care, running among vines, olive trees, and dirt roads. Life followed the rhythm of creation, with each morning bringing hope and each night bringing rest. It was a village where the church bell, dedicated to Christ the Saviour, marked the time and the faith. The peasants awoke at dawn, and before even touching the earth with their tools, made the sign of the cross. The water from the spring was fresh as divine grace, and many said that God still walked among the fields there. But that year, a year that would be remembered for generations, something changed in the atmosphere. It was as if an invisible weight fell upon the rooftops, as if the air were denser, and even the birds seemed to fly lower. Thus, if sensing a still hidden catastrophe, it was on a grey afternoon that the first sign appeared. A traveller, a tall, pale man, staggered into the village, his eyes feverish, breathing as if fighting his own shadow. He could barely speak, only murmuring that he came from a distant city where death walked the streets as absolute mistress, and where people fell without warning, marked by black spots on their skin. The villagers grew uneasy, exchanging glances of fear and doubt. But still, out of charity, they took the traveller into a secluded house, tending to him with damp cloths and prayers. However, as dawn broke, the man was no longer breathing. That's when the terror began to spread. The oldest, wisest, and most God-fearing gathered around the body and recognized the evil. There was no doubt it was the plague, the same plague that devastated kingdoms, cities, armies, and that arose as punishment or trial. The plague that took rich and poor, just and unjust, without distinction. The news spread through the village faster than the wind, and fear seeped into the houses like dark smoke. Families began to shut themselves off from the inside, locking doors, covering windows, avoiding any contact. The silence grew, and with it, a feeling that the hours were longer, that the sunlight was no longer so warm, and that the sound of the bells seemed distant. In the following days, the inevitable happened. The potter's wife fell ill, high fever, cold sweats, dark spots on her neck. Then the baker's son. Then an old woman who lived near the church. With each new sick person, the village held its breath, as if its own life were being sucked into a dark abyss. The bells began to ring with distressing frequency, not for celebration, not for warning, but for mourning. They had a slow, heavy sound, as if each chime were a cry echoing in the sky. The children, once full of laughter, now hid under the tables when the bell rang. The village priest, a pious man named Father Germano, did his best to bring spiritual comfort. He would enter houses, sometimes just placing his hand on the door and praying from afar, as many did not want him to enter for fear of contagion. He carried with him a wooden crucifix, worn from so many prayers, and always repeated, "The Lord is our refuge and strength. Do not fear, for God does not forsake those who call upon him." But his eyes held the pain of someone who sees a flock surrounded by invisible wolves. In the market, once so full of life, there were now only empty shelves, forgotten sacks of wheat, and the smell of aged wood. Conversations had ceased. The animals seemed restless. Even the water of the fountain, once crystal clear, now seemed to reflect a deep sadness. And day after day, the plague advanced. A mother knelt beside her feverish son, pleading through tears, "Lord, take away my pain, but do not take away his life." A father hastily buried his own brother, fearing that the body would become a source of further contamination. A young man was isolating himself in the barn, fearing he would bring the disease home. Despair was growing, and faith, though strong, was tested like gold in the fire. Some, driven by panic, began to say it was punishment for the village's sins. Others believed it was divine wrath for something they didn't know. There were those who believed it was simply cruel fate, and there were those who, between sobs, repeated endlessly, "God, have mercy on us." And so, between sleepless nights and heavy days, the entire village plunged into continuous mourning. The smell of burning herbs in the air, used in an attempt to purify the houses, mingled with the aroma of anguish. It was then that the elders, on the verge of despair, gathered in the center of the square, where there was a large fig tree, a symbol of protection since ancient times. They were exhausted, but still sought hope. They sat there, forming a circle, and began to discuss, "Who can help us? There are no doctors. There are no medicines. Perhaps it's time we cried out for someone holy, someone sent by God." It was during this silent gathering that one of the oldest, Uncle B.'s Elia, raised his voice with an unexpected gleam in his eyes. "I heard of a holy pilgrim, a man who cares for the sick and does not fear the plague, a servant of God who travels through the cities bringing healing, comfort, and hope. His name is Saint Roch." Hearing that name sent a glimmer of hope through the circle. Some had never heard of it, others knew only vague stories. But at that moment, when death seemed closer than life, any trace of light was like fire within their hearts. And so, in that desolate village, the first seed of hope that would change everything was planted. The name of Saint Roque echoed like a psalm, like a divine invitation. And as the sun set, tinting the sky with a deep red, it seemed that even the angels silently observed the events, as if awaiting the outcome of God's plan. Heaven hears our request the following morning, as the sun timidly rose behind the dry hills. A thin mist covered the small village like a veil of sadness. The doors remained closed, the commerce silent, the streets empty. It was as if life had suspended its breath. The few who dared to venture out walked with hurried steps, eyes downcast, as if afraid to awaken something asleep. But that morning, a man was walking toward the central square. His cloak was simple, his feet marked by the road, and his gaze firm, not that of someone without fear, but of someone who had learned to trust heaven more than himself. Era Saint Roque, pilgrim of faith, a man who had left everything to serve the needy. Upon seeing that desolation, something in his heart immediately recognized that village was on the verge of imploding from fear. And when fear reigns, it opens doors to despair, doubt, and loss of hope. Roque walked between the silent houses, glancing at half-open doors. From inside, some pale faces watched him with curiosity and suspicion. Who was this solitary traveler who dared to walk unhurriedly through a quarantine territory, where even the wind seemed to carry a threat? In the town square, a small group gathered around the elder Isaac, the community leader. He was the one who tried to maintain a thread of organization and courage among the families, even when courage itself failed him. Noticing Roque approaching, his voice hesitated. "Strange," said Isaac, raising his hand. "You shouldn't be here. The roads are closed. This is contaminated territory." Roque stopped before them, but did not back down. His voice was serene, firm, with that gentle authority that comes not from force, but from truth. "I heard that this village is suffering," he said, "and I came to help." A murmur ran through the group. Some took steps back, others frowned, as if insulted. "Help," said a woman, her eyes red from crying. "Even the doctors don't want to come in here. What help could I offer?" Roque moved a little closer, keeping his hands visible, a gesture of peace. "I bring no human promise," he replied. "I bring a request that rises to heaven. I bring faith. A profound silence fell over the group, as if an invisible force were telling them all to listen. The wind died down. The sound of creaking doors ceased. Even the birds seemed to fall silent. Roque continued. During my pilgrimage, I saw devastated cities and shattered families. I saw strong men succumb and courageous women crumble. But in all these lands, I also saw something greater than fear. The hand of God moving when his people cried out with sincere hearts. He raised his eyes to the overcast sky, and his voice took on the cadence of an ancient prayer. Suffering is not the end, even when it seems unbearable. Tears are not eternal, even when there is no longer the strength to wipe away the tears. There is a God who sees, who hears, who acts, and he does not abandon those who seek him with faith. Isaac took a deep breath, shaken. There was something about the man's presence that defied all logic. It wasn't recklessness. It was something reminiscent of the ancient prophets, men who walked into the storms by divine command. Who are you? The old man asked in a low voice. Roque tilted his head slightly. I am merely a servant of Christ, a pilgrim among the poor and a caretaker of the sick. I have seen the plague before, and I know that heaven answers when we are small enough to ask for help. The woman with red eyes fell to her knees. Then pray for us, she said, her voice breaking, because we no longer know how to pray. Our fear speaks louder than our faith. Roque approached and respectfully placed his hand on the woman's head. I will ask, she said sweetly, but I want you to know, God does not ignore the cry of a wounded heart. Even if you have no more words, he hears what silence tries to hide. Isaac discreetly wiped away a tear before saying, if your purpose is to help, then we'll be happy about that. But you need to know, we can't protect you. You will be exposed to danger. Roque smiled slightly, almost paternally. My lord, since I left my home, I have surrendered my life into God's hands. Nothing here can take from me what I have already given to heaven. People began to approach little by little, like someone warming themselves around an unexpected flame. Their expressions changed slowly from disbelief to curiosity, from curiosity to a forgotten thread of hope. Then Roque walked to the center of the square, knelt on the dusty ground, and opened his arms, as if offering the entire place to God. His voice, though low, seemed to reach every house. Lord of mercies, Father of the sick, God of the helpless, you who hear the cries of those who have no more strength, look upon this abandoned village. See the sadness that has settled in. See the children without comfort. See the sick fighting for their lives. See also these people who, even trembling with fear, wish to believe again. He bent down until his forehead almost touched the ground. Not through our own merit, but through your infinite compassion, send relief. Open the windows of heaven, so that your help may descend upon these homes. May your angel pass over every door, declaring life where death wishes to reign. The village was motionless. Not a single leaf rustled. No breath seemed to dare break that moment. When Roque raised his face, his eyes shone not with human emotion, but with a spiritual conviction known only to those who walk with God. I will stay here, he said. I will help the sick one by one. But before that, know this, heaven has heard, and when heaven listens, nothing remains the same. From that morning onward, something invisible began to change. There was no cure yet, no visible signs, but hope small as a faint flame had been rekindled, and a village that seemed doomed finally breathed a sigh of relief, because one man, guided by faith, dared to ask them, Almighty, for what others no longer had the courage to ask, and heaven really listened. To walk among the sick, the sun was beginning to set behind the mountains when Saint Roch walked through the village, determined to begin his mission. The light of dusk tinged everything with golden hues, but in that wounded land, the gold seemed ironic. The windows remained closed, and the sounds of daily life had been replaced by muffled coughs, groans, and footsteps that dragged more pain than strength. Roque stopped in front of the first house where he knew the plague had entered. A charcoal mark on the door circle with a line through the middle indicated contagious. Nobody went near those houses. No one dared even touch the gate. But Roque took a deep breath, opened the gate with a firm hand, and went inside. The air inside was heavy, hot, filled with the metallic smell of fever and sweat. There was almost no light, just a flickering lamp in the corner, as if it were dying along with those who suffered there. A middle-aged man lay on a straw mat, his face marked by fever and his body covered in dark spots. His eyes, once lively, were now to tired windows. His wife knelt beside him, washing his forehead with a damp cloth and praying in almost inaudible whispers. When she noticed Roque's presence, she recoiled in fright. "Don't come any closer. You shouldn't be here." Roque approached with slow, respectful steps, like someone treading on sacred ground, because for him, human suffering had always been a place where God walked closest. "My sister," he said softly, "love doesn't hide from pain, and God has never turned away from the sick." "Why should I turn away?" She began to cry, covering her face with her hands. It was the cry of someone who could no longer fight, but also didn't want to give up. Roque knelt beside the sick man, touched his hand carefully, and the temperature was so high it felt like it was on fire. "What's your husband's name?" she asked. "Elias," she replied between sobs. "He was strong. He never got sick. And now, I'm losing him." Roque closed his eyes for a moment, as if drawing strength not from his own soul, but from on high. Then he placed his hand on Elias's chest and prayed, "Lord, you who are the physician of souls and bodies, look upon this child of yours. Fever consumes him, but your mercy is stronger than the fire of illness. May your spirit pass through this home like a gentle breeze, bringing relief where there is pain, life where there is death." The wife watched in silence, tears streaming down her face uncontrollably. Roque kept his hand there for several minutes, until he felt the man's breathing slow down, his expression relax, and the heat subside just a little, but enough for the woman to notice. Is he better?" she asked hopefully. Roque shook his head humbly. "Healing belongs to God, but he is here. That is enough." And with that same spirit of confidence, Roque left the house and went on to the next one. The second dwelling was even more somber. Inside, 3 children lay huddled together with high fevers. Their mother lay collapsed in the corner, exhausted, having watched over her children for so long that her body no longer obeyed her. Roque approached the children and placed his hand on each of their foreheads, feeling their racing hearts and short breaths. "Will they survive?" the mother asked, without raising her head. Roque knelt beside her. "Mom, you are not alone." She lifted her face pale, tired, desperate. I didn't ask him to come," she murmured, almost as if speaking without hope. "I prayed, but I guess God didn't hear me." Roque gently lifted her face with his hand. "Sometimes God's answer doesn't come as we imagine. You asked for help, and he sent it. I am here because heaven heard me, not because I am strong, but because he is." The woman began to cry, now not from despair, but from surrender. Roque took the children's hands and began a long, profound prayer, repeating words that seemed to come from much further away than his lips. "God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, look upon these lives, so small and precious. May your angel remain by their side during the night. May the fever recede. May the shadow of death be banished. May breath return. Give strength to the mother. Bring peace to this home, because you are the God who sees, the God who acts, the God who saves. And as he prayed, the children's breathing became less labored, and their moans subsided. It wasn't a complete cure, not even a sudden miracle, but it was hope. And for that family, hope was more than they had experienced in many days. Roque left that house almost in the middle of the night. The streets were even quieter now, and a few lamps flickered through the cracks in the doors. He walked towards each home marked with the plague symbol. In each one, he prayed. In each one, he played. In each case, he offered more than care, he offered comfort. And something extraordinary began to happen. People who had previously been terrified began to follow him from a distance. First 2, then 5, then almost a dozen. They brought clean cloths, water, herbs, and began to help. Roque not only treated the sick, he rekindled the humanity in the village. For where fear locks doors, faith opens them. Where despair divides, compassion unites. Where death tries to reign, the love of God establishes resistance. And that night, for the first time since the beginning of the plague, the village did not sleep. Completely terrified, he fell asleep on the job. In prayer, in hope, Saint Roch walked from house to house until the last lamp went out, and when he finally stopped, exhausted and covered in dust from the road, he looked up at the sky. "Sir," he said in a low voice, "if you wish, use me until the end, but don't abandon these families. May your hand remain here, because while you are present, the night is not so dark." And with that prayer, Saint Roque concluded the first of many days dedicated to the sick. A man alone could not have endured so much pain, but a man with faith. He is always accompanied by heaven.